Thank you, Mr. Pritchard, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. I want to also thank my honourable friend, the member for Glasgow South, for securing this valuable and important debate. The government claims that evidence clearly shows that its sanction regime is, to quote, clear, fair and effective in getting people into work. So why is it hiding data from experts who want to study that effectiveness? Benefit sanctions are an utterly inhumane, blunt instrument that has not shown to be effective in its supposed aim. Instead, almost every study that has looked at the benefit sanctions regime seems to find the word cruel, and indeed pointlessly cruel, according to a select committee report, and cruel, inhumane and degrading, according to academics, to be appropriate for what the experts conducting the study have found. The sanctions regime is enormously disproportionate and punitive. A complete withdrawal of support for missing a single job centre appointment, with examples easy to find of people sanctioned because of illness, lack of Wi-Fi connectivity, or other reasons outside of their control. And that cruelty can be imposed with little effective scrutiny for up to 3 years. The organisation Feeding Britain Network reported that in Leicester, one woman with 2 children was sanctioned after she missed appointments as she went to Iraq to look after her sick father. They say it left her in a terrible state with bills and rent arrears. Another referral over the summer had his appointment with his work coach rearranged because the work coach wasn't in, and then got sanctioned because whoever was standing in for the work coach rearranged it again to be earlier, and he missed it. The UK is an international outlier in this cruelty. Indeed, the UK is unique amongst OECD nations in the use of sanctions to punish claimants. And Bristol University Press publication on the impact of sanctions shows that they are largely ineffective and indeed often make people more likely to remain out of work. And this consciously cruel regime is operating at record levels, more than double its pre-pandemic numbers, in the middle of a cost of living crisis that even huge numbers of working people who in my constituency of Leicester East are sanctioned for not accepting 0-hour contracts to top up their income are struggling to cope with. And of course, the more vulnerable a claimant, the greater the impact of this conscious cruelty. The government cannot claim to be unaware of this, as it has been repeatedly warned by MPs, academics and advocate groups of the huge damage done. Only recently, Rethink Mental Illness called for an immediate halt to the sanctions, with the group CEO describing it as incredibly damaging to mental health because of the massive financial and psychological impact of sanctions and the fear that sanctions might be imposed. Speaking of the more than doubling of the number of sanctions we already heard, expert David Webster of the University of Glasgow said that a universal credit claimant is now more likely, in the midst of the worst cost of living crisis in living memory, to be under a sanction than to have COVID, a truly horrifying illustration. Dr. Webster also accused the government of withholding information about the scale of the crisis it has created, and this is not a new phenomenon. As we've heard, in February this year, the government blocked access to data for academics who wanted to simply study whether benefit sanctions were driving up suicide rates, bringing a vital study that was already underway to an immediate halt. Even Even for the Conservative Party, this is an astonishing level of disregard for people's mental health and indeed for their lives. It's institutional cruelty, yes. It's time to end this culture of secrecy about the impacts and effectiveness of the government's benefits sanctions policy. Will the minister commit the government to releasing this data? Information already in the public domain. In fact, it's an open secret. Information already in the public domain showed that a staggering 43% of unemployed disability benefit claimants had attempted to take their own life because of the horrors inflicted on them. And that was in 2018, long before the sanctions reached their current appalling high level. So I'll end on this, Mr. Pritchard. Sanctions are indeed pointlessly cruel, inhumane, and degrading. If the government thinks that the facts show otherwise, why is it hiding them? Thank you.